everyone! So I decided to do a tour of my childhood bookshelf. I haven't actually looked at this thing in a long time, so I'm not quite sure how this is gonna go, but I figured it'd be fun. First one is this one, The Seventh Door. I have actually never read this book. It is the third book in a sequel series to Dragons in Our Midst, which was my favorite book series when I was like 10, 11 years old, a little bit older. I stopped reading this series because the first sequel series has a lovely ending that I won't go into because spoilers. And the second series, I only read part of the first book and I was not happy with where it was going, so I decided to just leave it. From what I could tell, it did look like there was going to be some interesting character development. I just didn't like where it was going. So, if you like this book, then good on you. Let me know what you think. I would love to hear about it. And then next up we've got The Brothers Grimm. I think I actually got this copy from my cousin Naomi. She also has a channel. I'll link it down below. Oh! Looks like this one's had a couple owners actually. There's another name here in the front. Okay, I'll put it away now. And next up we have Bella at Midnight. This one is one that I did not read thoroughly, but I did really enjoy what I actually read. It kind of reminded me of if Joan of Arc was more fairy tale-y and had a happier ending. So yeah, this is one that I don't remember enough to really say much more, but I would recommend checking it out if you like that kind of thing. So this is what it looks like. And then down to the next shelf. Oh, okay, good, yay, I like this one. The Mythology Handbook. This one, I do have the actual book that this is a companion piece to, which is Mythology. It's a much larger book if you don't know. And this was kind of my first exposure to mythology as a complete mythology. I'd heard about it before, but never in its entirety, or entirety. You can't really have an entirety with Greek mythology without spending basically your life studying it, but kind of a beginner's comprehensive view. But yeah, I always enjoyed this because it has lots of little designs and pictures, and it has, like, it's laid out like a textbook, but it also has like a parallel story running. Like, it'll tell stories in this format, but I don't know, I find it really interesting. Also, I'm a bit of a nerd for the Greek language, and they have this, so yeah. Apparently I organized them by type. Next up we have the Dragonology Handbook. I forgot I had this. I also have Dragonology, which is my favorite of the bunch, even if the mythology one is a bit more nostalgic for me, I guess. And this one is when the textbook aspect becomes almost cooler, in my opinion, because, you have things like, where's a good example? Like this, where it's talking about different types of footprints that different types of dragons have. This one is a book that I read multiple times as a kid, and it's Did You Know Devotions for Kids. I love trivia, so like it would just have like a single page trivia story and then a devotion derived from that. Like this one, like May 8th is How Did a Toy Stop an Army? And then like why was soft play invented? What happens when you grab a crab? Like things like that. It's quite interesting actually. Kid me loved it. And there's one called Ethical Intelligence. This was from college. I just found it kind of interesting. So yeah, I read this, I believe, I think it was actually for my management class. But yeah. And then this one's just a little workbook, but Stranger on the Road to Emmaus. I did this at camp a few years ago. It's really interesting. If you're wanting kind of a good overview of how the Bible all fits together, this is really, really good. There's Telling Yourself the Truth, which, yeah, this one it's very well written and a lot of people love it. It's not particularly my favorite book, but it's well done. Now a complete change of tone. Further Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. I'm not the biggest Conan Doyle fan out there, but I do really love Sherlock Holmes. The Hound of Baskervilles is probably my favorite mystery book. And I actually also have the Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. And of course, it's always nice to have matching covers. Remember what I was talking about before with The Seventh Door? This is book 1 in that series. So this is the book that I started reading and stopped because I didn't like where it was going. Except for one character, he was one of my favorite characters in the original series. Not when I first read it, ironically, but then as I kind of grew up with the series, he kind of moved up in my list of favorites. And in this series, he gets some really interesting character development, and he has become so awesome. So that was one thing I did really love in this book. Next up, we have Mad Kings and Queens. This book, it's interesting. It's a bit much at times, and I do think they tend to over-dramatize things a little bit at times. But it is interesting, nevertheless. It talks about all kinds of different monarchs from all throughout history. Like, there's the table of contents. Like Isabel She-Wolf of France is in here. Vlad the Impaler is in here. Juan of Castile, Henry VIII is in here. Ivan the Terrible. Like, there's a lot of them. Like, there's this whole page plus that one. Oh yeah, so just those ones, but that ends up being a lot. Each of these guys really only have about maybe, I think, 4 to 6 pages, so they have just short little descriptions, but there's a lot of them as a result. Oh! Okay, I'm just going to show you these 3 at the same time. Magic School Bus. The Magic School Bus one, novels. I haven't read these in years. This one what got me into sharks, which I do find sharks fascinating, and this was the book that kind of sucked me into that. So this one I have a lot of nostalgia for. I had more of these originally, but I'm not sure where the others went. They're probably in a box somewhere. Oh! It's an Osborne puzzle adventure. If you, for those of you who don't know, these things are basically, they're not choose your own adventure, but they're kind of like Encyclopedia Brown, where you read, like 2 pages, and then they'll give you a puzzle at the end. Sorry about that, the camera ran out of memory. But anyway, as I was saying, so yeah, every 2 pages or so, usually every 2 pages, yeah, they give you a little question at the end. This one says, can you find the missing parts, it being like railroad parts. And then through that, you kind of go through the adventure with the main character and kind of solve the mystery. They're a lot of fun. And yeah, they're usually about this long. I have a couple books over there that are collections of them, and they're about that thick. So, yeah. Oh, okay, so this is another Osborne Puzzle Adventures, but I never actually read this one. Oh, I guess I was just keeping it for a rainy day. These are also ones that I skim read. Rowan Hood. The concept is, for the first book, the main character is Robin Hood's daughter. She did not grow up with him, and then she was raised by her mother, and then her mother dies, and so she decides to go and find her father. That's what this is. She's actually different than the type of character that usually gets shown as Robin Hood's daughter. Not that I have a problem with that kind of character, but it's interesting seeing a different type. She's more of a healer, I guess, in this one, and which has an interesting dynamic, even though she is depicted with a bow, which it's been a while since I read it, but I'm pretty sure she does use it. It's just not the same way as her dad. And then this one's a sequel, and it's about one of the supporting characters from the first book. And I love her, actually. Now we have The Mouse and the Motorcycle by Beverly Cleary, and one of its sequels, Ralph S. Mouse. I know that we also have Runaway Ralph, which takes place between these two, but I'm not sure where it is. It's probably in a box somewhere. But yeah, this one I read a couple times. I read it once in school, and then again with my family. Or actually, I think that was, I can't remember the order. Either way, I read Runaway Ralph before I ever read this in school, so reading this in school for the first time was a very weird experience. But yeah, it's a really cute story. If you haven't read this one, I would definitely recommend it. It's basically about this mouse who lives in a hotel, and just about all the little fiascos and adventures he has. And there's a boy who comes to stay in the hotel, and he ends up letting Ralph use his little toy motorcycle. So it's about Ralph just having this relationship with this boy, and it's quite adventurous at times, but it's just really cute. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Oh, and another Sherlock Holmes book. This one is The Exploits of Sherlock Holmes. This one is a lot of fun. It's by Lewis, I pronounce it as Satcher, it might be Sackar, I'm not really sure. But he's the author of Holes. And this book, it's very, very quirky, it's a lot of fun. It's a collection of short stories, actually, and it's called Sideways Stories from Wayside School. And it's pretty much what it sounds like. I'm just going to read the back to you. Wayside School was supposed to be built with 30 classrooms all next to each other in a row. Instead, the classrooms were stacked one on top of the other, 30 stories tall. The builder said he was very sorry for the mistake. That's probably the reason all kinds of wacky things happen at Wayside School, especially on the 30th floor. That's where you meet Mrs. Gorf, the meanest teacher in the whole world, before she turned into an apple and was replaced by Mrs. Jules, who has her own special way of teaching arithmetic. The kids are a weird bunch, too. From Big Mouth Jason to Stinky Sammy to Sweet and Pretty Marisha, I think it's pronounced, sorry. Or I don't know, Marsha, I don't know. Who can beat up any boy in the class. You'll never guess Allison's secret or figure out how mean Mrs. Gorf came back to haunt the kids on the 30th floor. But you will discover the funniest, craziest, most mixed-up place that ever called itself a school. So, yeah, and there's a couple other books in the series, too, but this is the one that I've read. It's a lot of fun. I actually remember loving this book as a kid. It's called Twice Upon a Time. And it's Sleeping Beauty, the one who took a really long nap. And what it does is it tells the story of Sleeping Beauty, but it tells it parallel with both her story and the prince's story being told at the same time. Like, it kind of switches back and forth in each chapter. And I really like this take on the main character because it actually delves into what it would be like to be blessed with, you know, intelligence and grace and all these things. And there's one part in the book where she's quite insecure about going, are any of the things I'm good at actually things I'm good at, or are they just all results of these spells that the fairies used? So she decides to go and try and learn to do something that is just hers, and it has some interesting results. But yeah, this is one that I enjoy. There's a lot of drama with his family. His mom is part ogre, and there's some uncomfortable things with that. It's quite an entertaining book. I loved this one. Yeah, it is definitely a middle grade book, but you know what? I love middle grade. And then another Sherlock Holmes book, and I just want to show it to you because it's a nice old copy, and I love old books. What is the copyright on this thing anyway? It's, ooh, cool. Huh. Anyway. Oh wow, I'm not even sure if it's gonna... Oh, it looks like something may have been ripped out of the front page. It's old. This is one that I have not actually read thoroughly, but I keep picking it up because the concept is really good and I really like the execution of what I have read. It's just that things keep happening and interrupting me. It's called Montmorency, Thief, Liar, Gentleman. And it's about a man who is in prison, Victorian London. And then when a whole bunch of things happen in prison that kind of help him to learn some interesting skills. So when he escapes, well, sorry, not when he escapes, when he's released, he decides to start leading a double life as Montmorency, this gentleman, and also as his butler, who is this really scary, like, creepy man. And he is also a thief. And he's quite successful at it. So I didn't get... Actually, I got pretty far in, but it's been a while since I read it. I think probably about 5 years? Anyway, so I might pick it up again sometime, but I enjoyed what I had read. Owls in the Family is one that I read in school. I haven't actually read this specific copy, but I read the book in school and I really enjoyed it. It's an interesting one. It's basically this family, and I believe Saskatoon ends up adopting 2 great horned owls. And it's just about everything that goes on with that. Oh, here's Runaway Ralph. This was my dad's copy that he read to me when I was a kid. Okay, and then I'm going to limit myself to 3 more rather than going through the rest of the stack. First off, we've got The Original Adventure of Hank the Cowdog. If you haven't read Hank the Cowdog, it is hilarious. It's basically westerns spoofed in the setting of a modern ranch. And instead of a sheriff, you have the cowdog, who calls himself head of ranch security. And I didn't really get all the spoofs when I was a kid, even though I still enjoyed it, but there's a lot of them. Like, I believe she's a collie, Beulah, who lives next door, and she's very obviously supposed to be like the school teacher who ends up falling in love with the sheriff and all that kind of stuff. Like, there's a lot of spoofs with these ones. I will warn you, it does come across as a bit dated at times, to put it nicely, but I still find them really entertaining. It's actually a massive series. I think there's 3 more here. The highest one is listed as number 26, and I'm pretty sure that's in near the middle. So yeah. This one is one that my older sister, Emma, introduced me to, and that's the Worldwide Dessert Contest. I love this book. It actually reminds me a lot of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So I'm just going to read the back. For 11 years in a row, John Applefeller has entered his highly original apple desserts in the Worldwide Dessert Contest. And every year he's watched his delectable treats turn into disasters while the evil Sylvester Sweet wins first prize. But this year, when John's greatest creation, the world's largest apple pancake, flops, he decides to seek help from the king of dessert chefs, the magical B. Raleigh Ragoon. Yeah, it's very quirky. There's a lot of stuff that happens that's just completely out of the blue. And even, look at this cast. It's that's a pretty accurate representation of what they're like. But yeah, that's another one I would recommend. And last one I want to talk about is Ella Enchanted. I love this book. I first was introduced to it through audiobooks, and I've listened to that audiobook so many times. I have no idea how many times, but I just love this version of the story of Cinderella. Ella is by far my favorite version of the character. I like that she's strong and independent, but she doesn't come across as harsh or mean. She's very, very kind, very loving, and also her relationship with Char, depending on how you're pronouncing it, is wonderful. I really love that Gail Carson Levine actually let them get to know each other beforehand. So yeah, but anyway, that was just a tour of my childhood bookshelf. If you have any comments, let me know. Well, what were your favorite books as a kid? I'd love to talk to you about it. Anyway, thanks. Bye.